So Chapman says, hi, Dave. In conjugate, should upper back work always have the element of progressive overload, like the main lift and assistance lift? It seems that for many, back work is only an afterthought.
It depends. There's the answer, right? It depends. There needs to be a banner or a shirt made of that. The reason why I say that is sometimes the upper back work is simply because you're not activating your upper back properly. So sometimes, I would say probably half the time, it doesn't need to be addressed as a heavy compound movement. It has the go-tos are going to be like band pull apart and face pulls. But anymore, I tell people to not do those because they've been doing them for 4 years. So if this is an activation problem and they've been doing those for 4 years, A, are they doing them correctly?
Right.
B, are they not doing them correctly because their shoulders are bound up? C, what other things can they do? I'd say that's right first. What other things can they do would be first, because most people aren't going to have somebody that's going to be able to help them determine if they're bound up or if they're doing it correctly. So let's just assume they're doing it correctly.
Right.
So any other upper back exercise that's going to be of higher reps, it's going to be a chest supported row, elbows out, focusing on pulling the traps tight together. Keep the weight light, just squeeze hard, full range of motion, and just really, really think about that upper back. A cable row, single arm cable row, focus on, that's a little harder for people to focus on because they can't feel it squeezed together. Standing pull down, so foot up on the bench, bar, instead of a face pull, you just use a bar, right? So but you're going to pull it to your chest and just find that spot where you can really feel the shoulder blades come together. If that is the problem, then you're going to see a difference in your main lifts within a week or two. Because let's just say it's a terrible analogy, but you'll get what I'm saying. Let's just say the upper back's asleep, and then we just smack it awake, and then it starts doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right. So how can you tell if it's one or the other? If it's happening with your warm-up sets, it's probably an activation thing. If it's happening with the heavier sets and it doesn't happen with the warm-up sets, it's probably a strength thing. Now, if it's a strength thing, what he's talking about, my answer would be yes. You have to find exercises, maybe like a snatch grip deadlift or snatch grip high pull or anything that's not a shrug. That's going to be a safety squat bar, good morning, upper back, good morning. And then that will have to be a progressive overload run over, I would say, between 3 to 5 sessions. Now, how am I going to define the sessions? If you train upper back just once a week, which I don't think you should do, but you could do once heavy, once light. That could be over 5 weeks with the same movement, or it could be Monday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday, but after 5, switch, and go to the next thing. Unless you can't progress after 3. As soon as you can't progress, change.
Right.
So...
Awesome. We got actually a few more here. World Peace 97 says, I'm in my second off season of powerlifting. I've been focusing on bodybuilding, power building, just to improve the small muscle groups. Would you recommend something like that, or is it better to work on my supplemental work?
The supplemental work is the small muscle groups.
Right.
So repeat the question again.
So essentially what he's saying is that he's in his off season and he's been doing bodybuilding and power building, right? And his focus is I'm going to assume when he says small muscle groups, he means like weaknesses and imbalances and things like that. Should he should he continue doing what he's doing essentially?
In the off season?
In the off season.
Okay. So first thing is this is his second.
Yes, his second off season.
So I don't know how many meets you've done, right? So let's say you've done 2 meets, 3, whatever. How many weeks do you need to get ready for the meet? That's the first thing you need to figure out. Is it 12 weeks, 10 weeks, 16 weeks? What is it? How many weeks do you need for that periodization, peak, block, cycle, whatever you want to call it? Okay. The beginning of that is what I call your starting point. So where's the next meet? When is the next meet? How far out is your starting point? Let's determine that first. Then where do you need to be at that starting point? Because you don't want to roll into the starting point not being conditioned and ready.
Right.
And
got to be ready to train.
To the best point that you can be bulletproof. once you determine that, then that answers this question. You know, if you're 15 weeks, 20 weeks a while out from that starting gate, it doesn't really, I could actually make a case for it doesn't even matter what you do right now. You could take a freaking month off and do absolutely nothing. You know, it really doesn't. But it's that's where it gets into that, right? So this is when you want to build those weak points, though. You know, because you're far out from that. So yes, to keep doing what he's doing, but what were the biggest weak points training for the last meet? What were the glaring things that stuck out? If it's not muscle groups, then where was the lift the hardest? Where did you have the issues? Fix those, address those now.
Right.
And then you can have a little bit of back off away from those for 3 or 4 weeks before that starting gate, because you're going to start hitting those even harder before that. But it would be really cool if you can go into that with those being your strengths.
Right.
And then next time you'll expose different weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think people need to realize that, especially for powerlifting specifically, like you're constantly on this moving target, right? You'll start at one point, say in the off season, you're more directly, you know, specialized towards that top end strength, and now you have to start swinging back the other way, but you can't get too far away. It's a constant, like a balancing act between those different kinds of things. So it sounds to me like he's on the right path so far. Next question we have is Jay Bell. What was the tell that Juji Mufu needed to work on his leg drive on deadlifts?
Well, the size of his, you know, teardrop was the first. I mean, that's I'm going to look at somebody if as a lifter, like if his deadlift was where he wanted it, what would he physically look like? So what's missing here? And it actually happened to be the same thing that's missing in the bodybuilding. You know, it's a weak point for his bodybuilding. So that's not a tell, it's a starting point.
Yeah.
Like, is this the issue? Maybe, what do the hamstrings look like? What do the glutes look like? Yes, I'm looking at his ass. You know, I'm looking at his glutes. I'm looking at his hamstring. You know, seeing how they're working, seeing how he walks, seeing how he moves,
and his erectors and like everything.
And then what does he do? You know, he does the tricking. He does all this other kind of stuff. What does that involve? Is your knee? Is your leg shaped the way it is because is your knee fucked up from the landing, the explosive work, the training that he does? So it's breaking that all by a process of elimination is the first thing that you're doing. Then you start looking at the lift and start seeing, okay, what is the lift doing? But you already kind of know where to look, and then go from there. Now, next time I see him deadlift, he may be in prep for powerlifting, and that's not going to be the case anymore. He may fix this training for the bodybuilding.
Absolutely.
Then it's going to be something else. I want it to be something else.
Yeah, right. You don't want it to be the same thing 6 months later. All right, next question I got is from Matthias. He said, just upgraded a DIY PVC earthquake bar to a legit one. Those lockout holds have been a killer. Do you have any other recommendations for implementing the earthquake bar into a dynamic effort or max effort bench workout?
I always put it towards the end. You know, I know some people that will try to use it and do use it as a primary movement. I'm a little hesitant on recommending people do that because it can throw you all over the place. You know, if you're very, very solid on it and you're good with it, you know, I'm sure everybody's seen people lift, you know, mountains of weight, you know, on those things, and it can be the primary, but normally it's not. I like the holds the most just because of the stability aspect, and that's what I see most people lacking. Now you can do the reps, you know, full range of motion reps. I'm not telling people not to do that. I'm just going off what I've seen. So if he wants other things to try to do with it, I mean, there's all kinds of shit you can do with it. It's just going to fall more towards the back end of the training day.
Yeah.
You know, overhead presses are really fun. You know, that would be a good one. Walkings
like the overhead walks and shit.
Not just like you hold like a Zercher. And then you walk with it that way. That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's
a
really good one. More GPP. You could do that almost every day. You could do that on any day. probably would avoid things like tricep extensions and stuff like that. Squatting's a bitch with it.
Yep.
You know, so there's you can just play around with it. It just, I wouldn't put it as a primary movement right now.
Actually, when Joey was out, he made a video about talking about the 3 favorite bars, and we picked the earthquake bar for one of them, and he used it for the first time on the video, and then he asked me in the video when does it stop shaking?
Yeah,
It's like when you make it stop shaking.
Yeah.
Next question we got. Let's see. Jerku, there's no question there. Just support. Best strength podcast and source of information. Thank you very much for that. Can close grip incline be used on dynamic day? And if so, in what situations would you program it?
It can. I've used it as the speed movement for 3-week waves. Realize that it's not chest, that it's tricep is essentially what you're building there. So if the triceps aren't a weak point, I don't know if I'd use it as that primary speed movement, because the speed movement doesn't always have to be the bench press.
Right.
It can be a floor press, it can be close grip incline, it can be I don't know about board, it can be anything, right? Just run it for a 3-week wave, see how it impacts. You can usually see based upon how your max effort work feels if it's productive or not productive. If it starts tanking your max effort work and it's not a circa max type of thing, then it's probably not something that you're ready to put in just yet. You know, it should make the max effort work feel a little quicker, a little smoother. So yeah, it can be put in there. It can also be put in as a supplemental exercise, you know, so the secondary exercise. Yep. That's probably how most people are going to put it in there, but I always had more luck actually putting it in as the main movement.
Awesome. So that was the last super chat that we got. We will
let's shut it down.
Yeah, let's shut this one down. Any final words? Any last words?
No, just again, I appreciate everybody's support with the Meadows situation, you know, passing, and just leave it at that. You know, I didn't want to do any piece of content without putting that out first and just move on from there, but I appreciate it and everybody else appreciates it.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Thank you very much for stopping in. As always, make sure you rate us on iTunes, subscribe, share this out with everybody you know, and we will see you guys in the next one.